Liberty in America is under assault. We no longer live in a reality that includes property rights. We're no longer the kings of our own castle. We no longer enjoy the true benefits of capitalism. Instead, we're negotiating our rights with our own government. This isn't how our country was founded. These aren't the ideas of our founders. It's time to seize back our country. This is the Liberty Hour, where these important issues will be discussed for the sake of America's future. With a cigar in one hand and a copy of the Constitution in the other, here's your host, Sean Thompson.
This is the Liberty Hour podcast. This takes place during the week, obviously, if you're listening to it live. And if you're listening to it live and you care to participate, the phone number, 312-642-5600. And here's the thing. I'm getting a lot of flack from the guys in the booth. They're telling me, oh, nobody's calling. I said, listen, I could see people are listening out there. So do me a favor, if you care to participate in the show, give me a call. And here's the thing. I saw two very, very important things. And as you know, if you listen to this podcast, I believe we, the people of Illinois, have a leg up on the rest of the world when it comes to government collectivism, when it comes to the possibilities and the reality of what happens when you do have a collective government, when you do have a socialist agenda, how it takes the mere politician who is supposed to be your representative and how it creates him to be an overlord, a god, beyond prosecution, beyond consequences of actions, and in control of each and every one of our property. Because this is what it's about. It's about controlling the citizen through created problems of false and failed policies. Because this is what the politician understands, more so in Illinois than even other states. But what's happened is that philosophy has gone through to Washington. And that is, it is within government's failure lies their strength. So when government fails to properly adhere to its duty to take the taxes it collects from us in various different creative ways and use it for roads, use it for bridges, for infrastructure, use it for the benefit of the people, that by them failing to do that, they get to take more from us due to their very failure. And this is a diabolical situation. This is a problem of where you must turn to your captor, turn to your abuser, embrace his corruption and failure in hopes to get the services you were originally provided for. And in Illinois, we are the prime example. We are the destination. We are the town of serfdom Hayek wrote about in his Road to Serfdom. We are that. This is where it all comes together, and that's why it's a one-party town. And I don't mean that we don't have Republicans. Oh, we do. We do have Republicans, but they turn into Democrats. This is where you cannot tell the difference. And to prove my point, here in Illinois, if you were watching the evening news, you heard about Rahm Emanuel's Sam Giancana economic plan, right? So what are you going to do? You're going to do drugs, you're going to do gambling, and you're going to do extortion. Now, drugs and gambling, right, the libertarian in me, says, listen, if you want to be a scumbag, you have the freedom and the right to do that. You want to do drugs? Go ahead. I think it should be legal. I think the cure for our drug problem is put everything that man wants to do on a shelf in a store, have it fair, equitable, and easy to get to, and you will have a better society because you can't control man. The man has to control himself. And when you pretend that you can have laws of prohibition, well, need we reflect on what really built organized crime? Is prohibition. What the problem of the South Side? It's prohibition. That it doesn't work, but, however, I yield to the reality that man's desire to control his neighbor is really not going to be cured in my lifetime. So we are going to deal with the reality of, we're going to have black markets and drugs, but now what they're going to do is they're going to pretend to change the moray, to change the tradition, to do a more easy, a more regulated drug. And they're going to hide it in the corruption of their lobbyists and their inner circle of bag men. That's who's going to get the marijuana distribution here in Illinois. It's already happened. By the way, if you know of these places, and for most of us that don't do drugs, we probably don't, but they're pretty much all over the place, these medical marijuana dispensaries in Illinois. They're all owned by wannabe mobsters or real mobsters or people who've paid off politicians for decades, and this is their kickback to them. In the same way that gambling is controlled by one guy in Illinois. His name is Heidner, and it's Gold Rush Gaming. And what this smart son of a gun does is he pays off politicians by giving them jobs, right? Like the Whig, Pete Silvestri, fat slob fraud that he is, who is a gaming agent for Gold Rush Gaming and a politician. So he gets to extort the people who want the gaming, and he gets a piece of the action once it's put in there in perpetuity. It's an annuity for this fat slob. 312-642-5600. This is what the reality of how this works in Chicago. So when Rahm Emanuel implements the Sam Giancana economic plan, it's already kind of started. It's in its infancy. But the part that's diabolical is the extortion of the not in the scam citizen, which is, by the way, 97% of us. And the reality is what they know that they've created this fraud world of municipal service, that a large part of that 97% wants in on it, so they'll sit quietly by while the scam goes on. But that's not what we do here at the Liberty Hour. We want to expand upon the scam and the ramifications and the results of it. So now the big idea is Rahm Emanuel's new gas tax. But let's, I don't have that kid do clips for nothing. Kid, where? Oh, here we go. Here we go. Rahm Emanuel. And this is from, I believe, CBS 2 News.
That proposal is actually a trial balloon for Mayor Emanuel, who wants to raise the gas tax statewide for transportation projects. Now, it's been 28 years since the gas tax was raised, but a 20-cent increase would amount to a 59% hike in that tax. That tax currently stands at 34 cents a gallon. Now, there is some bipartisan recognition of the need. Governor Rounder's transportation chief recently called for a hike in the gas tax and a hike in car registration fees as well to pay for a capital bill. Meantime, incoming Governor J.B. Pritzker is committed to a capital spending program. However, he hasn't said as yet just how he'd like to pay for it.
That's the media's way of telling you it's coming. And it's going to come fast and furious, and it's going to be paid for by those not in on the scam. Now, what do I mean by that? And I wanted you to recognize, by the way, the bipartisan attack on the individual in Illinois. They're both going to do it, the Republicans and the Democrats. They're just simply arguing about how much to hurt us. It's not if you're going to hurt us. It's not if you're going to correct. By the way, the most mobbed up crime organization in the world is the people who do work on a consistent basis for the state of Illinois. That's why they're the same 5 companies, same 5 contributors, same 5 contracts. And they get to mix it around, right? One guy gets to lay the cement, one guy gets to fix it when it breaks, then the other guy who laid it changes the name of a company and he maintains it. It's a scam that pays forever, and the politician gets fatter, and so does the guy who owns the company, and his feet get up and he develops a drinking problem, and the people get screwed. That's the routine. That's how it actually works. And all of the gas tax you now pay for. By the way, you already pay all this. And Ray LaHood, who went on to be the transportation secretary, I think for Trump for a while. I think he's not in there anymore, but he originally was. He comes from Illinois, the LaHoods. And he imposed in the 90s a permanent 10 cents per gallon strictly for infrastructure, strictly for roads. How does that work? Because once these taxes are collected, they go into the magic mystery box called the general fund. And that's where the spending really gets. And what the scam is the government doesn't do a fiduciary job for the citizen. I laugh every time they think this. You think the guy who bids the lowest gets the job? Not even close. In most cases, it's the guy who bids the highest. And there's going to be a little something on the back end from the estimated cost, and that's directly kicked back to a campaign contribution. And the beat goes on, and nobody says a word in Illinois, except how are we going to continue to fraud the people? I know. Let's claim crumbling infrastructure. Yes, I know you've been paying for it for 50 years. And the tolls and the whole 9 yards. And we'll use it as a crowbar of failure to go after more money. And the people have no representation. There's no buffer because who we elected, They benefit from this scam, but you don't. And I want to spend a little bit of time doing something a little different and think about all the ways you don't. So if I were a Republican in the House in Illinois, I would say before we cast upon the citizens of Illinois another 30 cents per gallon tax, do we now know what the citizens of Illinois pay in way of municipal vehicles, in the way of municipal gas cards, in the way of free gas? Who exactly gets all this? I mean, we know it's every worker for the municipality, both state, local. We get that, and federal, by the way. But it's also all of these failed bureaucracies that we pretend are services. CTA, right? All the buses, you pay for all that. How about the post office? How much gas you think the post office uses? So you're not just going to pay for your car when you fill it up. That's what they want you to focus on. That's what Channel 2 News wants you to focus on. That's why they report it in the benign manner where, oh boy, looks like the roads are crumbling. Looks like we're going to have to raise taxes. Looks like we haven't had a tax increase since 1993. They don't tell you that at the time Illinois imposed the 1993 tax. It was the highest in the country. They also don't tell you at the time they imposed the tax. It started somewhat as a percentage-based, then became cemented. They don't tell you that gas in 93 was $16 a barrel, $16.75 the low. There was a spike above $22, $23. But the reality is it hovered around $18 a year. $18 a barrel for the year. So you were paying a tax based on that. And now it's $50 and they're telling us it's not really, it should be higher. So they're going to hide some of these taxes in percentage. They're going to hide some of them in permanent taxes that, regardless of the fluctuation of oil, will be permanent there. And they're going to hide the result of what happens to the money. So they don't want you to look at all of the different ways you pay that tax, not just on your vehicle and your wife's vehicle and your kid's vehicle, but on people who squander the gas. Now, I know police have to leave the car running, but really? Can't come up with a better system than that? Maybe just the keys in it in case you got to jump in it? So how much of that municipal gas is frauded and wasted? And how many of these workers have the card and fill up their wife's car, their daughter's car, their son's car? We don't really maintain it. It's not really governed because who watches the watchers is the corrupt. It's not the virtuous. And in Illinois, there isn't a question of if we're going to do it. We are simply discussing how much we're going to do it. And then what happens when you get a politician from Illinois? You just call him a Republican. And you know what? His tune doesn't change. Because here's Ray LaHood on a financial station on CNN. And this is about 4 months ago.
The big problem is not what to fix. Everybody knows a bridge, a pothole, a road that needs to be fixed. America is just in a state of terrible repair. Our roads are crumbling. There's 60,000 structurally deficient bridges right now. The problem for Congress, and I served in Congress for 14 years, how do we pay for it? There's no money. The Highway Trust Fund is broke. There really is no money. And I think part of the dilemma for the Trump administration, too, is how do we pay for it? We're talking billions and billions and billions of dollars. Now, Ed and I have been traveling around together for about 4 years promoting the idea, raise the gas tax, do infrastructure through three Ps, public-private partnerships, maybe get an infrastructure bank, give states more opportunities for tolling. But we have to raise the gas tax. That is the pot of money that built America. That's the pot of money that built the interstate system over the last 40 years. And it hadn't been raised since 1993.
Well, he's talking about Illinois specifically, but that's not true. None of what he said is true. That's the pot of money that pays for the bloated contracts. That's the pot of money where the costs of those contracts, 30% just mysteriously finds its way into the campaign coffers. 312-642-5600. The kid is still making fun of me, telling me no one is calling or listening. So give me a call if you care to participate in the show. And if you live in Illinois and you don't care to participate and you don't care to do anything, then shut your mouth when it happens. Shut your mouth because they're telling you what's going to happen. Rahm Emanuel's bragging about it.
If you take the lower range of the 20 cents, and since we haven't raised it since 1990, that would just be about equal to what inflation was since 1990.
Yeah,
that's
inflation.
Just catching up to where we were.
Because he's an economist. Don't let the the history of him being paid off by Bruce Rauner's investment firm as he's actually an economist. Because what he understands is that he's never bought gas. Rahm Emanuel has never gone into his little tiny pocket in his little midget pants, picked out his little tiny purse, and paid for gas. It's never happened. His entire life, and most of these bureaucrats, you pay for their gas. So you've got people, once again, who will not feel the repercussion and consequences of their actions on themselves or on their inner circle, casting upon you the yoke of tyranny, the cost of bureaucracy, the expense of failure. And that's the reality of what is happening in Illinois. On a side note, it's going to make it a hell of a lot easier for people to make decisions to get the hell out of here. I mean, if you have the ability and you stay, well, then you're a certain kind of masochist that probably wants in on the scam. Now, what is the hope for this? You know, it's funny. I spent yesterday, and I will spend forever, rejecting national populism and rejecting collectivist government and government controlling macro decisions and hiding taxes, and that's why I fight a lot of Trumponomics. But the one thing that I loved about Trump was that he scared the establishment. He scared the Republicans. He scared the Democrats. And he scared them because not only did he pay them off, I mean, let's be quite frank. For 50 years, he owned them like so many coins in his pocket. He wanted something done, he knew how to get it done. $50,000 check to Rahm Emanuel, boom, your problems go away. You got tax problems on Trump Tower in Chicago? Easy. You hire Zoot Suit Eddie Burke. You get him in there with the gold Rolex. You give him a little sack of Joe Weah. Your problems go away. Right? He knew how to play the game. He's from New York, for God's sakes. He almost admires the way Chicago fixed it and perfected the corruption New York's been working on for 150 years. So he knew how to play the game. And what I didn't like about him is I didn't think he put up enough fight when he could have, but I understood the play. I get it. You want to get something done? You got to know how to do it here in Chicago, Illinois, baby. Just like you do it in New Jersey. Just like you do it in New York. By the way, it's not that much different in California. It's getting like that almost everywhere. And that's the real fight back that we need to claw back. But how do we do it? You do it with a guy like Trump, who yesterday, if you were lucky enough to be watching the news conference in the Oval Office with that drunken stumblebum, Nancy, I can't feel my face, Pelosi, which, by the way, Mr. Producer, her part is getting a little wide. Have you noticed that? I mean, this poor thing. Put her out the pasture, for God's sakes. Anyway, you saw her and the transgendering Ruth Bader Ginsburg, doll hair Chuck Schumer. He's looking real manly, isn't he? I mean, it was a cartoon yesterday. The whole thing looked, I couldn't decide if it was The Onion or if it was Saturday Night Live. Saturday Night Live hasn't been funny for 10 years, so it might have been The Onion. As you saw the debate happen, and I was truly bewildered by the fact the media wasn't objecting to Nancy Pelosi's repeated call to stop discussing this in front of the media. For 20 minutes, Nancy Pelosi pretty much was saying, just please, can we just please stop discussing this in front of the media? And at one point, Donald Trump said, well, it's transparency. And he's exactly right. And what you saw is the body language in negotiations. As an old commodity trader, as a real estate broker, my favorite part of the financial exchange of goods and services is the negotiation. I love it because it's in that not only are your juices flowing, the heart is pumping, but it's within that you're reading the other guy. You're seeing the flaws and weaknesses. And Trump was beautiful, baby. I mean beautiful yesterday. As he was demanding, one of the staples of his popularity and a principle of why he was elected was the build a wall. Whether you argue with his terminology or not, he's a guy trying to do what he said he would do. I could argue that why didn't you do it when you had all the Republicans? But we already know that because the Republicans are Democrats just looking for a payoff, and they couldn't find one in that bill, in the various bills that they keep putting forward. But to see the actual negotiation between two professional liars, two career politicians in Pelosi and Schumer versus a first-time politician who, by the way, is turning out to be the best of them all because even if you didn't agree with Donald Trump, you saw him dominate the tone, the fundamental of what the argument was, and moreover, he could not be told why they were not going to do it. In fact, his broader point of safety for the nation, they had to agree with. I found it to be absolutely fascinating. And my favorite part is when he said, I'll take responsibility for that. Now, I have a couple clips from that.
And then we have the easy one, the wall. That'll be the one that will be the easiest of all. What do you think, Chuck? Maybe not?
It's called funding the government, Mr. President.
So we're going to see. But I will tell you the wall will get built. We'll see what happens. It is not an easy situation because the Democrats have a different view, I think, than I can say the Republicans. We have great Republican support. We don't have Democrat support. But we're going to talk about that now. We're going to see. One thing that I do have to say is tremendous amounts of wall have already been built, and a lot of wall when you include the renovation of existing fences and walls. We've renovated a tremendous amount, and we've done a lot of work. In San Diego, we're building new walls right now, and we've right next to San Diego, we've completed a major section of wall, and it's really worked well. So a lot of wall has been built. We don't talk about that, but we might as well start because it's being built right now, big sections of wall, and we will continue that. And one way or the other, it's going to get built.
And what's interesting is that the wall that Trump wants built, the wall that I believe he has built or improved major portions of it, this wall was originally agreed upon in 1986. 1986 in the Simpson and Mazzoli bill. So pretty much what we have to do now is watch as Democrats and Republicans reinstate the bill that solved all of these problems, the bill that agreed and demanded that a major pillar of it was that this, they called it a fence in the Simpson and Mazzoli bill, be built, of which we have already built a tremendous amount. It's not as if we have to start from scratch. We just have to merely improve it. And now all of a sudden we're arguing about costs and benefits versus the reality of it's already the law. You morons just haven't done what you said you'd do in 86. And that's Trump's greatest argument. And one thing as regular citizens, we wanted Republicans to do, one of the main reasons that guys like Johnny Boehner were able to come out and pretend they were conservatives, along with Paul Ryan and the rest of the cohorts, was because we wanted, when government was ignoring the people, to stop. See, the most of us that understand the beauty of government is the checks and balances, is the separation of powers, is the fact that if we don't agree, that the people, it shouldn't be tyranny of the majority, it shouldn't be a mobocracy. If we are witnessing abuse of the public power, of the public trust, of the public money, then shut the son of a bitch down. That's what most of us want in our real life. And that's what we would say for years. I know I was during Obamacare passage. Shut this son of a... Are you out of your mind? You're just going to blindly fund it? You're going to continue to raise the debt ceiling? Yesterday's show, we talked about how we don't really have a debt ceiling anymore. And it's because they've turned over their fundamentals. They've turned over their actual bargaining power. The beauty of Trump is he doesn't do that. In fact, he embraces the fact when Schumer accuses him of we don't want to shut down the government. He says, I'll shut this son of a bitch down here.
At this uncertain time in their lives.
The one thing I think we can agree on is we shouldn't shut down the government over a dispute. And you want to shut it down. You keep talking about it.
The last time, Chuck, you shut it down.
No.
And then you opened it up very quickly. And
20 times.
I don't want to do what you did.
20 times you have called for, I will shut down the government if I don't get my wool. None of us have said it.
You want to know something?
You've said it.
Okay, you want to put that on my...
You've said it.
I'll take it.
Okay, good.
That's
you know what I'll
beautiful,
say?
man.
Yes. If we don't get what we want, one way or the other, whether it's through you, through a military, through anything you want to call, I will shut down the government.
Okay,
absolutely.
fair enough.
And I am proud, and I'll tell you what, I am proud to shut down the government for border security, Chuck, because the people of this country don't want criminals and people that have lots of problems and drugs pouring into our country.
He's absolutely right.
I will take the mantle. I will be the one to shut it down. I'm not going to blame you for it. The last time you shut it down, it didn't work. I will take the mantle of shutting down. And I'm going to shut it down for border security.
But we believe you shouldn't shut it down.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Absolutely beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Now, can you imagine what kind of a popularity this guy would have if you minused about 80% of his tweets. You know, if you minused 80% of his tweets, if you took away the declaration, I'm the tariff man, if you really took out that uncomfortableness, I think this guy, his approval rating would be higher than anybody. I know I would be on board. I know I would be on board if he would stop with the kind of the lack of decorum. But this isn't lack of decorum. This is what we want. And this is being sold today as a lack of decorum. No. This is exactly what we want from our representatives. I'll shut it down if my people's wishes aren't respected, aren't abided by. If the reason I was sent here is ignored, then I'll shut it down. God bless you, because you know what? The debt is out of control. The spending is even worse. You shut the government down. You only stop 13% of the bills going out. It's all a fraud and a lie, and you could spend the time during the shutdown to have expert after expert at the podium to explain how Social Security is being paid for, how Medicare is being paid for, how interest on the debt is being paid for, how that's pretty much like an automatic credit card payment that we set up in our own lives. That's how it really works. Don't worry, the food stamps will go on. It'll all go on, and some of the bureaucracy will not get paid for a while. But the minute it turns back on, they get their back pay in perpetuity, forever. They're always going to get, it's always going to happen. Nobody gets stiffed. It's only you and I that get stiffed. Those of us in the private sector, we're the ones who don't make money. The government always makes its money. And what was Nancy Pelosi's continued call was to stop doing this in public. I found it fascinating.
Where you don't have walls, it is not effective.
Yeah.
Let's call a halt to this. We've come in here as the first branch of government.
Look at this drunk.
Article 1, the legislative branch. We're coming in good faith to negotiate with you about how we can keep the government
Open.
We're going to keep it open if we have border security. If we don't have border security, Chuck, we're not going to keep it open.
I'm with you. We are going to have border security.
And it's the same border. You're bragging about what has been done.
By us.
We want to do the same thing we did last year, this year. That's our proposal. If it's good then, it's good now, and it won't shut down the government.
Chuck, we can build a
But that's
much
it.
bigger
Let's
section with
debate,
more money.
Let's debate in private. Okay? Yeah. Let's
Why
debate
in private?
That is devoid, frankly, of fact, and we can.
We need
dispel
border
that.
security. I think we all agree that we need border security.
Yes,
Is that
we
right?
do.
Good.
We do.
See? We get along.
Why in private? Because what they want to do is pack it full of nonsense. It's not, they call it pork barrel. Isn't this a cute name? It's bribes, it's payoffs, it's schemes. Just like that farm bill nonsense bullshit that was released on us yesterday. Nonsense. Continues to just expand welfare. They call it a farm bill. The hell you call it a farm bill? Oh, I know why. Because we're subsidizing farmers both not to produce and to produce a certain amounts and to keep prices. You're price fixing. It's the price fixing. It's the food price fixing bill, along with a little kickbacks to the right people. Now, how can we say that? We can't call it a farm bill. We'll do that in private. That's what Nancy Pelosi wants to get back to. Let's just do it in private. And the funniest part about this, as he sits there, is that he's paid off Chuck Schumer since the 70s. This is the relationship that's really exists behind the closed door. And that's where we need the microphone. That's where we need the fly on the wall. Because Chuck Schumer's never really had a job. 1975, he gets elected to city council in New York, and from there, here he is. He's a two-bit slip and fall attorney. He wears those glasses down low like he was knitting the flag, and all of a sudden, everybody thinks, oh, look at this guy. He's a statesman. He's not a statesman. This is a guy who has watched and perfected the corruption of our government since the 70s to now. And how do you think his net worth is? Just Google it. Go on Open Secrets. See the money this guy raises. See the money he wastes. By the way, he doesn't pay for gas either. And I know I wasn't the only one who enjoyed when they went at it a little bit.
That's not the point here. We have a disagreement about the wall,
Washington
whether
Post.
it's effective or whatever. Not on border security, but on the wall. We do not want to shut down the government. You have called 20 times to shut down the government. You say, I want to shut down the government. We don't. We want to come to an agreement. If we can't come to an agreement, we have solutions that will pass the House and Senate right now and will not shut down the government, and that's what we're urging you to do. Not threaten to shut down the government, because let me just finish, because you can't get your way.
The last time you shut it down, you got killed.
Let me say something, Mr. President. You just say, my way or we'll shut down the government. We have a proposal that Democrats and Republicans will support to do a CR that will not shut down the government. We urge you to take it.
And if it's not good border security, I
It
won't
is
take it.
very good border
And if it's not
security.
good border security, I won't take it.
I'll tell you what. When you see it like that, it's fascinating. I think it shores up the Trump supporters. I think it makes the Democrats. I'm curious. You know, it's always hard for me to fathom how Democrats could support a guy like Chuck Schumer. How they could watch him, watch his net worth just expand, his inside trading, his inside land deals. Watch him use his power of office to extort other citizens. And I wonder how they could continue to support that. And when you hear the constant threat of shutting down the government, when you, in fact, guys who are 50, 60, we've lived through this. We realize it's a lie. There's nobody that ever suffered from government shutdown. No American. I mean, does foreign aid stop? Boy, I hope so. You mean we stop giving money to the Saudis, pretending they buy weapons to bomb the innocent people in Yemen? Gee, I hope that stops. Wouldn't that be just fantastic if that's part of the government shutdown? And then when it comes time for the Democrats to put forward, they're pretty much refurbishing the exact points Donald Trump is saying are the solutions, and they're just presenting them in a different tone. And here's Schumer.
We have solutions that will pass the House and Senate right now and will not shut down the government, and that's what we're urging you to do. Not threaten to shut down the government, because let me just finish, because you can't get your way.
The last time you shut it down, you got killed.
Let me say something, Mr. President. You just say my way or we'll shut down the government. We have a proposal that Democrats and Republicans will support to do a CR that will not shut down the government. We urge you to take it.
And if it's not good border security, I won't take it.
It is very good border security.
And if it's not good border security, I won't take it.
It's what the
Because when you look at these numbers of the effectiveness of our border security, and when you look at the job that we're doing
you
with our
just
military,
said it is effective.
Can I tell you something?
Yeah, you just said
Without
it's effective.
a wall, these are only areas where you have the walls.
We want to do
where
this.
you have walls, Chuck, it's effective. Where you don't have walls, it is not effective.
Yeah.
Now, why do you think yesterday I said about this debt ceiling, how it's disappeared? Did you hear what Chuck Schumer's answer is? The CR. You know what that is? That's a continuing resolution. And what that is the continued spending that we've agreed upon with a kicker. That's with a kicker. You're expanding upon that spending. You're allowing for just the same way it was, the same waste, the same fraud, the same abuse. And that's why both sides like this. Both career politicians like this. Do we have continuing resolutions in our own life? I just need a CR. I want to have a CR this Christmas like I had last Christmas. Irrelevant of how I'm doing, irrelevant of my decisions, irrelevant of my waste, fraud, and abuse, my own mistakes, my own foibles. I just want a CR. So I want to take my kids to Disney just like I did on that year. I really performed well and really had a great year. I want a CR. Do you want a CR in your life? The tale of two worlds isn't the tale of Democrats and Republicans and conservatives and so-called liberals. Tale of two worlds is results. We in the private sector have to deal and live by our results of our actions. Government has no results. They have no consequences. They have no repercussions. In fact, it's within that failure their strength and profitability lies. The more their infrastructure fails, the more their profitability lies. The more profitable they become, the more power they have, the more money they will make. It's guaranteed. In fact, government's the only thing they have to constantly avoid is success. It must be a meeting like one of those cloak and dagger things the rest of us are not in skull and bones imagine, right? The Masons, where they put the robe on you, they make you cut your finger over the tulip. And what is the one thing? And you think your mind must race. So I don't know. Is it omerta, like the mafia? Is it the whatever the Masons handshake, secret handshake? These morons in their costumes are. What is the one thing you must at all costs avoid success, my congressman? You must at all costs avoid efficiency, and you must at all costs avoid tax rebates. Back to the citizen who actually pays the taxes. I mean, can you imagine? It's honestly laughable that we send these congressmen and we hope, I hope things get better. And you're a Republican, and I hope, and Obama wins, and 2 years later we have a wave that makes this blue wave look ridiculous. We have a tsunami of conservatives. And what happens? Double spending, double the debt, double the taxation. Oh, and I know that they'll say, no, we didn't double income tax. Oh, no. But Ray LaHood's been out talking about how we constantly need new gas taxes. He's a Republican, right? And now we got Republicans that are constantly talking about freedom choice tax. We call it a tariff, a value tax. And I heard Kudlow. I heard Kudlow, and I heard Stephen Moore. I heard him say, look, it's a success. The Chinese are going to lower their car tariffs to 15%. Well, is America going to lower the 50-year tariff it hit in a chicken bill on trucks from 25 to 15? Or is it only one way? This is my greatest argument when I hear these so-called financial experts not give you the full picture, but demonize another country. Because what the neocon, and that's a neoconservative, and that it could either stand for a new conservative or a fake conservative, it's a fraud. They tell you they're on your team the whole time they're not. The whole time they're running the same scam. What they need is the constant enemy. Now, I was a kid born in the late 60s. Luckily, my grandfather was a political junkie. It's where it all started, right? Nixon outside of the Disney World with the I'm not a crook. I've been hooked ever since. Watching him laughing at Ford fall down the stairs. I've been paying attention ever since. And I remember Nixon, by the way, who was sponsored and found and benefited by Prescott Bush, who was the money behind Nixon the whole time. Anyway, I remember when they opened up China. That was Richard Nixon's great achievement. Was I think it was Kissinger was this guy. They went over to China and they said, look, we're going to, because back then the way you influenced the nation was you showed them what freedom was. You showed them what production was. You knew that liberty was a seed that would grow. And it really couldn't be stifled. It would turn into the tree of liberty. And what they said is, we're going to open up a little trade with you guys, and we're going to allow both American companies and other companies, if they're based in China, we'll buy products from them, and it'll be pretty even, pretty fair. At that time, it was really not tariffed up, but there was some taxation through customs and things of that nature. Anyway, I watched as that was big news, and I also watched as Walmart. We were talking in the room before. A couple kids in there, young. When I was a kid, there was no Walmart. I watched as Walmart and Venture and Zare and Kmart. I watched as their products grew. They were able to give cheap prices to people who, like my mother, didn't have any money, was able to buy things. It was at that time when it was a great asset to the consumer to have that trade open up. And I watched it explode. And it was interesting to me how we were kind of agreeing with China, and China was releasing the restraints on their people. Now, granted, they still have massive restraints. Restraints. I'm not here to tell you how great the Chi-Coms are. That's not what I'm trying to do. But what I am trying to show you is how we've benefited individual families from China, how they've seen through their own development, through their own country's profitability of trade, where they maybe said, you know what, maybe this America's great, and they made efforts and they got here, or they went to other countries. How it really is, that's the way you change the world, is by showing them what the example of freedom is. Not by George Bush blowing the hell out of them and hoping they conform, but by this way. And we watched through the years how China became very important. And then there was a big thing that they were doing, was they were buying our debt. China was a big bond buyer, among the biggest. They were investing in our country. They were taking those dollars they made, and they weren't just exchanging them with the yuan. They weren't just exchanging them with the Deutschmark back then. They didn't have the euro. They were taking those dollars, and they were ironically investing in American companies. They were ironically investing in American real estate. They were benefiting Americans. See, that was the beauty of it. And you were watching as the invisible hand. It really showed you its beauty, that it's not a magic trick. It actually is a working hand. Adam Smith was right. Capitalism works. It worked for both countries. And now I hear about how you have to constantly demonize. And it reminds me of when they would demonize the Middle East, countries in the Middle East, and then the whole time have backdoor deals with them. Iran-Contra, for example. How, they built Saddam Hussein from a two-bit thug, how the CIA created him to be a dictator. All that doublespeak by government. On one hand, how we need you, and on the other hand, how you're the villain. And I was able today, on my way into the podcast, I was listening to the morning show, Dan and Amy, and they interview Stephen Moore, who is, if you've listened to the podcast before, it's heartbreaking when fundamental people sell out, when fundamental people for a paycheck contradict themselves of old. and when they kind of, I think, insult the people who appreciated them when they had principles and fundamentals. And that's what Stephen Moore does almost on a daily basis. And here he is.
But look, these countries are engaged in espionage. They're engaged in stealing our technologies. They are violating the rules with respect to the embargo against Iran, which is a national security threat. I mean, I think what that whole incident should open Americans' eyes about is that China is now an enemy. We're dealing with the Soviet Union here. This is a Cold War.
You got to have an enemy, baby. Got to have a war.
Friendly rivalry. It no longer is. I mean, they are adversarial, and Trump believes
Are we adversarial?
that. By the way, Trump is, he likes the Chinese people. He likes, he understands the value of getting these products from China at low prices, but he also believes, I think quite correctly, that we are in a new era with China, and this abusive trade relationship can't continue for another few years.
What Stephen Moore knows, what Stephen Moore is hoping, is that most of you are unaware of Peter Navarro's absolute and total hatred of the Orient, of Asia. I guess they don't call it the Orient anymore. I do, I'm old. Of Asia. He's written books steeped in zero knowledge, never went there. He's a two-bit fraud teacher who couldn't make it in the real world and did nothing but write books about how Asia was the enemy of America. And he's, by the way, plucked out of obscurity is an understatement. He was laughed out of reality up until Trump. So I'm curious at the allegations. Are we involved in espionage? Are we involved in espionage? Anybody know where the CIA is today? 312-642-5600. Are we involved in currency manipulation? I'm curious. Gee, I don't know. Was TARP currency manipulation? Was QE currency manipulation? Is zero interest rates currency manipulation? Is zero interest rates only offered to certain companies currency manipulation? Is a tariff a currency manipulative tool? Is a tariff a violation? Gee, it's astonishing to me. And as far as stealing, that's interesting. Stealing. Do we steal technology? Or no. America doesn't do it. See, the problem is, this is a bunch of gypsies calling each other a thief. Well, you're all thieves. That's what's going on here. None of you are doing what you're supposed to do, yet all of you claim the scepter of virtue. Everybody has the scepter of virtue. We're the good guy. They're the good guy. When the reality is, none of you are living up to the agreements you cut. And here's all we can control. This is what any father tells their kid. All that I can control, all you can control is ourselves. I can't control you. Can I intimidate you? Yes. Can I bully you? Yes. Can I extort you? Only through those other things. Yes, I can do all those things. But can I control? Can I really control you? And the answer is no, but we could control ourselves. Imagine if America didn't do any of this. I mean, and some say, you're foolish. It wouldn't be. Well, that's the chicken and the egg argument, right? Should we do all these things? Well, the one thing you could argue about espionage, do we need it? Okay, fine, I get it. There's bad people, there's bad players, there's oligarchs, there's dictators. Okay, fine, I get it. I don't think we should ever steal, and I don't think we should ever currency manipulate. And I'll tell you why I don't think that. Because of the Bretton Woods Agreement. We gave our word that we would have fixed the dollar to gold, and that we would never take it off, and that we would never mindlessly just explode the money supply. And we've done all of those things in the last 10 years to a rate that is almost unimaginable. Can you imagine being one of these countries who agreed to exchange your currency for the U.S. dollar, and yet you get to print as much of it as you want, you get to target as much of it as you want, you get to ignore the debt on as much of it as you want, all except you guys? I mean, this is Big Jilly from Cicero stuff. Come on, let's shoot dice. Well, there's no dots on that dice, Big Jilly. Don't worry, I remember where they were. That's what it's like to deal with the American government if you're a foreign country. No, I know this is blasphemy. The neocon needs you to villainize, needs you to have an enemy, an evil, a Soviet Union. And I'm curious, that's an interesting comparison to me. Because who do you think has more in common with the Soviet Union? People who pretend they have government representation and are strictly viewed at by the government as chattel, as serfs. You know, there was a time in this country when a politician wouldn't even think about talking about, let's just raise taxes on gas. Let's create drug dispensaries. Let's have gambling only by the select contributors. There was a time when the citizen was free, and it isn't that long ago. But as we watch government become more and more collective and more in control of the economy and more control of social benefits and manipulating, what is happening? That is that Soviet utopia that was promised by the Bolsheviks. As you look at this crop of admitted socialists, Congress people, who is more like the Soviet Union? Ours is the slow cancer of metastasized socialist policies. And what it's doing is it's killing the host. It is the parasite of socialism, of utopian statism. And it is the complacency of the people. And it is only through Donald Trump, a guy like that, shutting down the government that we can ever get it back. So when he does things like that, I give him the big applause. I love it. Yesterday, Donald was my guy. Big Donnie came through for me yesterday. Now, get rid of that fraud, Navarro. Throw out that Liza Minnelli lookalike Steve Mnuchin. And as for Lighthouser, you slip and fall scumbag lawyer, you should be on Channel 32 trying to round up morons on welfare. That's what you should do. None of these people are smart enough or good enough to be in control of our macro economy. But you are. You're smart enough. You're good enough to be in control of your economy. And fight back this nonsense, constant excuse machine of their failure being a weapon used against you, of these on-the-take midgets like Rahm Emanuel in the Chicago Midget Mafia. So until you stand up for something, you're going to bow for everything. But not here. Not on the Liberty Hour. On the Liberty Hour, we're going to always espouse liberty. We're going to demand it. Thank you so much for listening. We'll be back, me and Macbeth, Sunday night, 8 to 9, on terrestrial AM 560 The Answer. Thank you.